Welcome into the checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
I'm Nicholas Raba.
And I'm Nicholas Tachek.
Kids, they grow up so fast, don't they? 1 minute they're taking their first steps, and the next they're spending thousands of virtual dollars on power-ups and Smurf berries. Or, well, who knows what they're doing on their iPhone. Of course, as a parent, you want to. In fact, you need to. It used to be that no one under 30 would have a cell phone. Of course, that's back when they came in briefcases. Ask your parents about that, kids. It was a sad sort of mocking time. Today, kids as young as grade school may be slipping a phone in their book bag before heading off to the bus or walking to school. Yes, a phone can help keep a child safe, but how do you keep your child safe on the phone? We're aiming today's topic at iPhones, of course. On today's checklist, keeping track of your child's iPhone, setting up restrictions on the phone, looking into options provided by mobile carriers, monitoring software for the iPhone, and finally, putting working limits on screen time for the iPhone. Now, what's interesting is we've spent almost as much time talking about this show as we're going to spend talking on the show. You're talking to a couple of security guys here, a couple of privacy guys when you talk to Nicholas and Nicholas. And so you say things like, hey, let's monitor your kid's phone. And the security hackles kind of go up, at least on half the team here. So, yeah, this may be less listy than it normally is. But let's start with monitoring your child's iPhone, even if you don't want to call it that. Why is that something that we should be doing? And what's a more palatable way to say it for you guys?
Well, a decade and a half ago, mobile phones had many, fewer features. They were much less robust in terms of functionality. After the advent of the iPhone and the emergence then of the smartphone as its own device category, all of that changed. Today, not only do lots of kids have access to phones, but they're often at the forefront of the latest fads for new apps or new ways to communicate, way ahead of the curve as far as what the parents might be aware of. So just think of the number of ways that a child with a phone could potentially communicate with other people, with voice calls, texting, social media, so Facebook or Twitter, through email, all of those third-party apps like Snapchat, Instagram, Skype, tons more that I probably don't even know of. And all of this comes before we even arrive at that open portal that is the internet that the iPhone represents. So with the sheer volume of available information, it can be kind of overwhelming for any kid and any parent. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of potential problems that come with that as well. Anything from stumbling onto an adult website or app would be one example of that. Cyberbullying is increasing leaps and bounds every year. It's become a real problem. And cell phones are playing a huge role in enabling that bullying. By having a way to contact the chosen bullying target, even outside of the classroom, it's kind of a significant source of stress for children of any age who are on the receiving end of that bullying. There's things that we as parents can do to help make the mobile device safer for our children, kind of try and avoid some of that bad stuff. And it's definitely a balancing act. There's things like parental controls that you can use in your family computer at home, and there's definitely options like that available on iPhone as well. There are some monitoring options available depending on your cell phone provider. Overall, it's simply a matter of keeping the child safe, protecting them from the threats that you can, and the unsavory content that's out there that you can. At the same time, again, with the balancing act, you have to show kind of a level of trust in your child with their growing independence and need for their own personal privacy. You can't be pulling a Big Brother act and, completely monitoring every aspect of the use of that phone and have them have any sense of trust in you. So it can be a difficult position for parents to be in, to figure out that right balance without completely eroding all the boundaries that are there. So it's definitely it's not an easy easy situation or easy solution there.
Let me, if I can, we have, well, parts of the spectrum represented here. I have no children. You guys both have kids, and we're talking about an age range of between 1 and, remind me, is it preteens or early teens?
Preteens.
Okay. So, I mean, the guy that you're listening to right this second has no working knowledge of this stuff, but the other two guys do. I guess what I'm wondering about is, well, I don't know. I mean, we'll just go through, and I feel certain that questions will come up. Just understand, this is not just for at least 2/3 of the people you're listening to, this is not just theoretically, this is how this would work. I mean, you're talking to a couple of dads, and then some dope who gets on the phone with them every now and then. Let's talk about the restrictions that you might want to set up on an iPhone.
Well, Apple does provide some pretty solid options for parents with children. iPhone is no exception there. There are built-in options to kind of customize a lot of settings on the phone, make the device safer for the child right out of the box. And you really have a lot of fine-grained control over how you implement these restrictions. And you can do so at a level that's appropriate to your child's age, maturity level. So to set up any of these restrictions, you go into the settings app on your iPhone, and in the general section, there is a restrictions section. And if this is the first time you are setting up restrictions, you will be setting up a password or a passcode to, in the future, access or change those restrictions. Now, obviously, that passcode should be something that your child cannot easily know or guess. So you'll be keeping that safe and unique, and keeping that one to yourself. After you've set up the passcode, you have access to all the different restrictions and settings you can change. For example, you can restrict some of the basic functions of the phone. You can set it so they can't use Safari or Siri or the camera or text messaging, or you can enable, which of those you feel should be enabled. Lots of content settings. You can allow or disallow access to the web. If you want to allow access to the web, you can set adult site filtering, which isn't perfect, but it's pretty good to kind of filter out some of the unsavory content that's out there. You can set your own whitelist or blacklist for sites that kids should or shouldn't be allowed to visit. If you want your child to have access to the App Store or iTunes, you can restrict the content based on the age rating. You can set limits for data usage, the highest setting for the sound output. Kids might not understand that they're totally going to ruin their hearing if they listen to music with headphones at the highest volume setting. So you can kind of protect them proactively there. All of these kind of form a really good foundation for setting boundaries with your child on their phone. There's more you can do, but this is kind of the baseline standard of ways you can initially set the phone up tailored kind of to your specific needs and your child's needs. It might take a little trial and error to get some of those restrictions right. For example, we have a family iPod that our youngest, our two young daughters use. And last night, one of them managed to click download all on my iTunes music. And I was wondering, I thought I had set up the restrictions properly. Apparently I hadn't. I was sitting there wondering why the internet was so slow last night. And I turned off my Wi-Fi and just used my cellular connection eventually because I couldn't even refresh Twitter. And lo and behold, this morning, I find out that on the iPod, she had downloaded 8.5 gigs of music, had completely run out of space. And I had to sit there clicking OK on the your iPod is full messages for about 15 minutes straight before I could fix the problem. So definitely some trial and error. And you might not get it right the first time, but overall, those restrictions can form a really good basis to go by.
Let's talk YouTube for a minute. What exactly could kids watch when they click around? I know when my little girl, my 3-year-old girl now, looks at the computer and she sees some playful icon on a web page, she's like, "Daddy, click that, it's a game." All right. Well, even when she's watching a video on YouTube, a kid's show or whatever it is, well, there's that side navigation that shows other videos. and whatever icon looks next best that they want to watch, they'll click on and they'll watch. Well, the other night, or a couple weeks ago, around Christmas time, she was going to sleep, and she said, "Daddy, I don't want Santa to come in. I don't want Santa to come to our house." Wait, why don't you want Santa? Right? Kids love Santa. Toys, presents. Well, I was bad today, so he's going to take away all my presents. He's going to take away your presents? Well, later to find out that she had clicked some next video on YouTube where there was this Santa that would take away all these presents and toys from the kids. Like, oh man. And talking to Nick, well, there's a special YouTube app that's specific or restrictive for kids as well.
Yeah, that app actually comes in really handy. We found out about it in my household when our oldest was randomly clicking through YouTube videos, and all of a sudden she's watching like conspiracy theory videos. And I was really confused. And it was because she went to related videos. And I mean, it's kind of like, 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. You get from point A to point B, and you kind of wonder what happened in between. So after that, we removed the main YouTube app and replaced it with YouTube Kids, which is much better, more annoying with all those kids' videos that get stuck in your head, but much safer for her. And again, allows a lot of parental control over searching or related videos, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of options out there for parents. Definitely.
Yeah, that's actually happened to all of us, though. I mean, it's interesting to hear. I mean, it's sort of comical that your child was watching conspiracy videos. I mean, that to me is hilarious, but that's also pretty much how I operate on the internet myself, right? I mean, I guess it should be not watching conspiracy videos, but I mean, you're on YouTube and you see something, there's something over in the corner, and you're watching that, and then all of a sudden you're watching a documentary about ducks. And it's like, how did I even get here? I was looking up something on, I don't know, security, or maybe my favorite Radiohead video. I can't even say. But, all of a sudden you've made those 4 hops that you're talking about. I want to just throw in one more thing, and this is not from again, with no experience of parenting, doing the Apple News thing that I've been doing for the past 11 years, excuse me. A few years ago, there was this sudden rash of stories about, and I joked about it in the intro, about kids spending $1,000 on Smurf berries. I mean, really, Smurf berries was actually the one that I keep thinking about, but it was just all kinds of things where, you think handing your 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old your phone just to, quickly play a game to keep them, occupied or out of your hair, you think that's fine. But, and of course, you've also not set parental controls on your phone because it's your phone. And you don't want parental controls on your phone. But I mean, just handing something like this to a kid, I mean, yes, you're handing them access to all kinds of content they shouldn't necessarily get to. You're handing them access to, or you're handing people access to your kid in a way. And then, of course, you're also just giving them access to your bank account. And they're not even thinking, hey, I'm spending money on something. They're thinking, oh, I want that. And then just tap, 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 tap. And suddenly, at the very least, you've got, a fight on your hands with your bank and with iTunes. Or maybe you're just the proud owner of $1,000 worth of Smurf berries. It's just a reason to sort of get to know those tools. Maybe they're not all for you. Maybe they're not all for your child. But, I mean, there are reasons that run the gamut of at the very least, keeping track of the kinds of things that your kid could get into. And then, doing what you want to do or doing what you can to keep them out of trouble.
And if your kids do have access to your iPhone or the iPad or things like that, you're able to set up parental accounts for where and how they spend or download apps, requesting permission from the main parental account now. So you don't have them just buying your million Smurf berries. You have to at least give some sort of authentication that they're buying the million Smurf berries.
Now, you say, though, correct me or help me out, you say that's if a child has access to your iPhone or your iPad. I mean, that's true to an extent, right? Like I was looking up an Apple TV the other day, and it asked me, do you want to put in your password every time you make a purchase? Do you want to put in your password 15 minutes after you make a purchase? Or do you never want to put in a password to do this? on my personal stuff, I would probably say I never want to do a password, or make it as unrestricted as possible, because I'm not handing my phone to a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old even. Do you get that kind of notification? Like if you're on your computer and your kid has your iPad, you have to have basically set up your iPad, even if it's only your iPad, you have to have set it up with a certain level of control so that you can be notified wherever you are, right?
So for that, the instance I was talking about was if the kid had their own iPad or their own device, and you set up the parental account for it. So every purchase that they make then pings the owner's account. So when my daughter wants to install the latest app that was advertised through one of her existing apps, and she clicks those buttons without even knowing what she's reading or agreeing to, then I get alerts and notifications on my parental account. So it'll ping my computer, my laptop, hey, your daughter is trying to install this program. Do you want to let them? They're trying to purchase this program. Do you want to let them? And then from there, you say yes or no.
Okay.
But if you just hand them your phone, your device, that you say, yeah, don't ask me that anymore, just automatically do these purchases, then you're going to own a couple Smurf berries. And if your kid is smart enough to add their own fingerprint to your iPhone to make it easier to access your phone, which, can happen if they know your PIN code. And kids nowadays are pretty smart. And they talk to other kids like, hey, look at this. I could put my fingerprint in your phone too. Then suddenly they may have easier access to your devices.
Yeah. Do you guys ever think about becoming Amish? So we've talked a bit about the controls that you have on the phone, or the access to controls that you have on the phone. Of course, your phone is no good without your carrier, and your carrier kind of, maybe your carrier wants to make money, maybe your carrier wants to help. You can sort of read that however you want to. But there are options for helping to safeguard your kids online that are provided by your carrier as well. Talk to me about investigating some of those options.
So cell phone carriers today recognize that navigating the challenges of keeping kids safe on their phones isn't easy. And many carriers will provide some options. You could choose how to manage your children's accounts. While these controls won't let you read your child's text messages, as far as I know, at least my carrier doesn't, they'll allow you to institute more reasonable options and usage options. So what might you expect to get in a parental package from your carrier? We mentioned cyberbullying as a problem earlier, and this is where a carrier service could be very handy. If someone else is harassing your child, you could implement a block on that number for both calls and texts. That should quickly shut off the flow of that content. And combined with privacy features on social media, if your kid is old enough to use social media, you could help protect them by blocking and kind of restricting permissions to what they're doing on social media and who has access to them or who can tag them and things. Controls available through your carrier also allow you to set limits, data usage limits, and a lot more. Perhaps most usefully, these services allow for parents to geolocate their children instantly. So if you have a teen or kid who's out of the house with friends, you're able to verify they've arrived at their destination safely by checking their phone's GPS position. While these services do come at an extra charge in a lot of cases, it could be worth adding to your monthly bill for the peace of mind. And on the iPhones, you're able to find my friends. Things like that are really good for keeping an eye out if your child has made it to their destination. You could even set notifications when they're leaving school or when they're leaving their friend's house. So you have a better peace of mind that they make it to their destination safely.
Okay. So we've looked at some of the things that are built into the iPhone specifically, I guess really on an operating system level. We've looked at some of the services that are provided by the carrier, which is, again, off the phone, but working with the phone. Talk to me about monitoring software for the phone specifically. I guess kind of looking at how it works and whether it might be a solution for people.
Yeah, this one's definitely kind of situational, but if a situation would happen where the phone that your child has calls for monitoring ability that's more robust than that provided by the built-in restrictions or what your carrier can offer, you might want to consider some third-party software options. Some of these monitoring applications require a jailbreak to run, and we'll touch on that in a second. But other parental control suites can provide you with some pretty robust options. They're usually cloud-based, don't require to jailbreak your phone. Instead, the phone becomes registered with the service provider there and allows the parent to kind of keep an eye on how it functions. With restrictions, you could block specific apps or set up the usage restrictions on the phone itself. But with some of these apps that are available in the App Store, they can kind of provide a more intensive web filtering experience and keep parents up to date on the activity that's going on when the child's browsing the web. If you search the App Store for Safe Browser replacements for Safari, there are some available. They have built-in web filters and content controls, and you don't need to kind of set up your own restrictions list or rely only on what Apple provides with their own filter list. If you would go this route, you'd just install the Safe Browser, disable Safari, and give the device back to your child. They would then use the Safe Browser to be accessing the web, and thus, some of the services do provide you with information on what the child's using that for at that point. With the jailbreak side of things, beware of any monitoring software that does ask you to jailbreak the device. Avoid it, because that can kind of bring an entirely different set of problems, like a bunch of malware on your phone. But with some thoughtful planning, most parents should be able to kind of find a good middle ground, a good workable solution with these options and some of the other options we've discussed.
I was going to say, and maybe this is something we should think about for some other time. There's a fine line, it seems to me, between, these tools being tools that can help with good parenting and these tools almost borderlining on, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. I don't want to say malware, because a lot of them are very reputable tools, obviously, but
spyware.
Yes, well, spyware, yeah, without actually being spyware. I mean, being legitimate things that you can get in the App Store. It then becomes a question, though, of on whose phone are you running this and why? But as I say, we can talk about that. That might be an interesting topic for another show. Maybe the April Fool's show. I don't know. Final item on the list for this week, putting limits on screen time and making those work. I assume this is not just saying to your child, okay, phone off at 6:30. I mean, we're talking about a technological something that's actually going to limit the screen time, correct?
Yeah, it's a little different than when I was a kid, when my mom would kind of put the egg timer on and say, you guys have 15 minutes. Doesn't a little more advanced than that now. While the iPhone is an amazing tool for communication information, definitely a good idea to set some reasonable limits for your child. And at times kind of forcing some of those limits rather than just requesting them, like with an egg timer, is the route to go. You don't want your child spending all day on the computer. You don't want your child spending all day glued to their phone. As parents, we might spend just as much time on our devices. So keep in mind what kind of example you're setting in the first place, but there are ways to set some reasonable limits on your kids' screen time. There are the time-based restrictions. We kind of briefly touched on that before, whether from within the settings on the phone itself with the restrictions or from your carrier. There are ways to set some hard limits on usage time. When evening comes and it's time for family dinner or homework, those restrictions can kind of help ensure that the phone gets left on the charger and you actually have some conversation over dinner and not everybody staring at their phones. Again, leading by example is definitely a good route as well. How much time are you spending looking at your screen? So try and limit your own use, at least in front of your kids. That way you'll have an easier time kind of convincing them that it's time to do something else, time to do something as a family. Encourage activities that kind of aren't providing an opportunity to use the phone. So play outside or work on schoolwork together or a hobby or something that's kind of encouraging group participation, as it were. Overall, though, I'd say a one-on-one conversation about healthy habits with your devices, appropriate limits, that kind of stuff. That's indispensable and really powerful. And while keeping in mind their age and their maturity level, you can still sit down and have a conversation with your child where you're treating them like an adult and kind of explaining your expectations and why and all that stuff. And that'll go a long way towards helping the child understand why there are limits and restrictions, but also kind of give them a feeling like they're not just totally in the dark and mom and dad are total control freaks and all that stuff. So it's definitely a two-way street, and keeping an open line of communication with your child is one of the most important things.
We do, of course, keep show notes for this show. So if there's anything that you heard today that you'd like to go back over, we'd love it if you visited the site. That is securemac.com/checklist. The website, again, is securemac.com/checklist. I personally would like to hear from people, and I hope I'm not opening you guys up to a bunch of stuff, but I mean, you're the security guys and you're also parents. While the people listening may not be security people, they're parents as well. And I would be curious to know if anybody out there has hit on any sort of like good tips on, I guess, sort of the lines of communication in a way. Like how are you doing this stuff? We're not talking about from a technological side, although I guess if there's an app or something like that that you think maybe we should know about, it'd be great if you sent that in. But if you've got some other tips, I'd be curious to hear those personally, for my imaginary children. The email address for that is checklist@securemac.com. That and any other questions you have or any other things you want to turn us on to. The address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please remember this. You are listening to The Checklist by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.